Best MZ.
Well, Judge Napolitano is our guest today, and I'm very, very excited to have him on. This is an abbreviated visit, but we're going to get him back on for a full 30 minutes or maybe even an hour. And he's, of course, from Newark, New Jersey. He's a tenured Superior Court judge in New Jersey and now an analyst on Fox News Channel. He has an extremely popular syndicated radio show and has Freedom Watch from Fox News Studios, which is an internet television show. And he also is the guest host for Glenn Beck. I wish he was the person doing that show, because he is the real bona fide. He wrote an editorial last week pointing out that the Republican health care plan was almost as bad as the Democrats. And he is a constitutionalist right up there with Ron Paul. And so he's somebody I actually agree with on like 98% of stuff instead of Glenn Beck 90%, because that 10% is a big area. And so here for about 15 minutes to talk about health care, the big government takeover of health care, extrajudicial, these boards decide what to do, and to talk about the cap and trade, which I believe has a good chance of passing the Senate. Both of these are now in orbit like ICBM space stations about to drop nukes on our republic. And Judge Andrew Napolitano is there fighting it valiantly. Judge, it's great to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Alex. It's good to be on with you.
There's so much happening. What's more important, cap and trade and the total micromanagement of our life by special interests with Al Gore set to make the money, or the government takeover of health care?
Oh boy, that's really a pick your poison, Alex. It's all part of the same big government mentality. Your kind comments about the piece I wrote was really from a monologue that I gave while filling in for Glenn Beck, which I'm also doing later today at 5 o'clock Eastern, by the way, on Fox News Channel, in which I argued that we don't have a two-party system in this country. We have a one political party called the big government party. The Republican branch likes war and deficits and assaulting our civil liberties, and the Democratic branch likes wealth transfers and taxes and assaulting our commercial liberties. But the mindset is the same. The heck with the Constitution, the heck with the Bill of Rights, the heck with inalienable rights, the heck with even the laws that we write. We know what's better for you than what you know is good for yourself, and we will tell you how to obey or else. Cap and trade is one manifestation of that. Obamacare is another manifestation of it. I was furious last week when I saw that even the Republicans, even so-called conservative Republicans, not Ron Paul, but many in the Republican leadership in the House, introduced Obamacare Light, which basically presumes a federal role in health care, of which there is none under the Constitution, tells insurance carriers you can't refuse to cover people because of pre-existing injuries. That's a very nice thing, but there's no power for the Congress to mandate it. That's got to come about by the free market. Bribes the states to change their court system, so they would basically go to the state of New Jersey and say, we'll repave the Garden State Parkway and the New Jersey Turnpike if you put caps on the limits that juries can award injuries against doctors in medical malpractice lawsuits. If you and I went to a state and said, I'll give you money if you change our laws, we'd be arrested for bribery. So this was all the same mindset of we in Washington can micromanage the private free choices of individuals back home, and I condemned it, and I do so again today.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is our guest today. Judge, what you're talking about and reading over the legislation, it's like Groundhog Day, but on a bigger scale. It's Chicago or New York, big city crime boss, a machine doling everything out. It's like with the takeover of General Motors. It even came out in congressional investigations, as you know, because you covered it, that people that gave money to Obama cronies or to the Democratic Party, they got to keep their dealership and got to keep their client list. But if you didn't, if you'd ever gone against them or hadn't paid the protection money, you lost your dealership, even though some of the dealerships were over 80 years old and made millions of dollars a year. And so now you have this 10th Amendment destroying federal power coming in with these unelected panels. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And I fear it can pass the Senate. I'm hearing some of the Republican leadership saying, oh, no, it won't. They said it wouldn't pass the House in the last 2 weeks.
Well, they did say it wouldn't pass the House, and it did pass by a 2-vote margin. And you know, you really can't tell with politicians because the leadership will bribe them. Remember the first time TARP, the so-called Troubled Asset Relief Program, went through the House, it was defeated. I remember I was on the Fox Business Network at the moment, fist in air, just emoting joy, shouting, "The beast is dead." But I was naive because the leadership came back and bribed by, you know, we'll build a courthouse in your district. Your friend wants to become a federal judge. He's got it. Just vote for us on TARP. And eventually people changed their vote. I fear that the same thing will happen with respect to Obamacare. The government, the executive branch, the leadership in both parties, in both houses, will bribe those who are wavering and give them something else that they want in order to secure their vote. But you also raise a very important issue about the delegation of federal power to non-elected groups. This is what FDR did, and FDR is the model for President Barack Obama. FDR had over 500 groups throughout the country appointed by local politicians who decided what prices and wages were. There's a famous case in my home state of New Jersey where an Eastern European immigrant opened up a dry cleaning shop, and the local wage and price group declared that you would charge 40 cents to clean and press a man's suit. This guy charged 35 cents, literally a nickel cheaper than what the unelected local board said he could charge. He was arrested by the FBI. He was indicted by a grand jury. He was put on trial in federal court in Newark, and he served a 3-month prison term in a federal prison for charging 5 cents less than what the local board allowed him to. Now, transform that into modern-day practice of medicine, you will have a board of bureaucrats, not even physicians, bureaucrats, that will be between you and your physician. You will lose your privacy. You will lose the freedom of choice because the bureaucratic board will give your physician a list of diagnostic tools that she or he can use to address your ailment, and then a list of procedures and medicines that she or he can prescribe.
And that's all in there. And that's why they're saying they're going to get all these hundreds of billions out of Medicare and Medicaid by reducing the care. Tom Daschle wrote a book admitting if you're old, you don't deserve it, you don't need it. People are really about to find out who these eugenicists are, who these control freaks are that inhabit the Democratic Party and to some extent the Republican Party. In the 5 minutes we've got left with Judge Andrew Napolitano joining us today in a very busy schedule, I want to shift gears now to war. You talk about the Republicans want endless war and the Democrats want to nanny state you together to death. But look at Obama. He's increased troops before in Afghanistan. He's now saying he's going to send 40,000 more in, that we're never going to leave. There's over 300,000 international and Afghan troops there now. I see absolutely no difference between the parties, just different rhetoric.
I must reluctantly agree with you. I say reluctantly, not because I don't like to agree with you. I do, but because I was naively expecting that we would not see this kind of buildup under him that we saw under George W. Bush. But think about it. War is the health of the state. When we fight a war, people will look the other way when their taxes are raised and when the government takes away their freedom because they accept the illusion that by fighting the war, the government is somehow keeping them safe. Presidents love war because it lets them escape the confines of the Constitution. It lets them become a little bit of a prince. It even causes judges sometimes, if the president does something under the guise of war making, to look the other way and defer to the executive branch. Fortunately, the Supreme Court did not do that under the Bush years. And every single time his war-making powers were challenged in the courts and made its way to the Supreme Court of the United States, he was 0-6 before a Supreme Court that was appointed largely by Republicans.
Judge, were you surprised?
I don't like to rely on the Supreme Court to save us because they're life-tenured and you don't know which way they're going to go, and because it takes too long for the issue to get to them, and too much harm can happen between the time presidents wage war and the time their war powers are challenged in the courts.
Were you surprised that Obama flip-flopped so strongly and went from being